finishing up on that, basically just need to put the rods on. Well, what's happening today is we have people here from Federal Railway Administration to do an inspection. And this is basically, okay, is the locomotive safe? What work have you done? Have you actually done the work you claim to have done?
Oh yeah, that sounds like SpaceX and NASA.
Yeah, it's.
They want money. They have to show what they've done.
Well, this has nothing to do with funding. This is anybody who runs a steam locomotive in the United States is covered under the Federal Railway Administration rules, which include a daily inspection, every 30 days washing out the boiler, every 92 days a quarterly inspection, every 366 days an annual inspection, every 736 days a 2-year inspection, which includes inspecting the bolts that help hold the firebox together, among other things. And then a 1,472-day inspection, which includes retubing the boiler, doing ultrasound testing and x-rays for the entire boiler, and recertifying the boiler for another 1,472 days of use. Now the neat thing there is that we can take up to 15 years to put 1,472 days of use on a locomotive.
So it's the mileage.
Well, it's not the miles, it's the
days of use.
Days of use.
Days of use. Okay, days of use.
And for it to count as a day of use, we have to have a fire in the firebox and the pressure in the boiler at the same time. Which is actually kind of nice, because if we know that we need the steam locomotive on Friday, we can fire it up on Thursday, get it heated up, but we need the cylinder cocks open so there's no pressure in the boiler. Doesn't count as a day of service.
Oh, I see.
And the rules are written to make it work like this, because the whole idea is you do not want your steam locomotives to be abused. And one way to abuse a steam locomotive is to heat them up too quickly. Which, if you're concerned that the day spent heating up the locomotive would count as a day of service, you'd be more likely to heat it up too quickly the following day. So we've got the FRA inspectors here. It's actually kind of neat, because when this locomotive was finishing up its full frame-off restoration, we actually brought FRA inspectors up here to and they use this locomotive to train inspectors.
Oh, nice.
Because there's about there's about 2,000 steam locomotives in the United States. About 200 of them have been running at some point in the past. Any year, maybe 40 or 50 of them are actually running. Which, when you start figuring out just how much, how many inspections the FRA has to do, you very quickly realize there's not quite enough steam locomotives to keep everybody fully trained. So they, because we're federal government, we're able to they're able to come up here and take a look at what we're doing and train their people.
Is that red handle a big dipstick? That little red handle.
That's a release valve. Okay, basically the water that's going into a steam locomotive boiler is ordinary tap water. With some extra stuff added to it, so it won't foam up. So the pH balance is correct, so it won't attack the steel. And you tend to get a lot of weird gunk in a steam locomotive boiler. Some of it is scale, which the inside of this boiler is actually coated with a special paint that the scale will not attach to it. So instead, it kind of goes down to the bottom. And over time, the bottom of the boiler will fill up with gunk. So at least once a day, if you're running a steam locomotive, you do what's called a blowdown. And you come out, you pull up on that handle, and it opens up a valve, which is actually where the hose is attached. And it draws water from the bottom of the boiler, which means it takes the minerals with it. And when it takes the minerals with it, it cleans it out. have a much longer life.
Sweet.
Now, what's going on now, which is a inspection, is stuff that was normally done in a roundhouse. Roundhouses were basically places to grease and oil locomotives, which for a mainline locomotive could be done, which was done about every 150 to 200 miles. Washing out the boilers, inspections, minor repairs. Most railroads had multiple roundhouses spread out along the main line. Each railroad would also have one place where they could tear the locomotives apart and put them back together again. For this railroad, the Delaware, Lackawanna Western, which ran from Hoboken, New Jersey to Buffalo, New York. Their locomotive shops are right here in Scranton, which is where we're headed. Normally, I would take you right out that back door. Obviously, we can't right now, so we're going to have to head out and around.
Okay.
And please watch your steps. We are going to be on some rough ground.
Yeah.
What is that water sound?
That is from there.
Is the water coming? Is that the sound of the water coming out of the train?
Yeah, that's water draining through the locomotive boiler.
Oh, I thought that was just collected rainwater.
Yeah, I know. Let's say, yeah, they got that line of stuff supposed to, they claim it was going to hit like New York City about 2 with the bed thunderstorms and.
Probably later than that. It should be coming through here around 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Well, we're a little bit.
Oh, look, they got the snowblower.
They always got the snowball.
Well, it's been moved. I wish I'd love to see one of those.
Of course, you got the little parts coming over here with the spray paint.
Oh yeah. Well, those don't even belong to us.
Those are actually part of the still active line.
But look at the big one on top of it that somebody put in.
Yerbs?
Gray. Like it says like okay. And then the other guys.
See, I'd love to see one of those old-fashioned snowblowers working.
Well, every year, the Coonbras and Coltec Scenic Railroad, which is a state park operated by both Colorado and New Mexico, does a special run to open up the line. And they have a working narrow gauge rotary snowplow.
Whoa.
And they will put 2 passenger cars on behind the 2 locomotives that are pushing the rotary snowplow.
Oh, sweet.
And you're able to get off and hike up onto ridges where you can photograph the rotary snowplow in operation. I'll warn you, it's not cheap. It's about $1,500 a ticket.
Yeah, but, I mean that's a once in a lifetime experience.
Hotels pay for the cost of running the rotary snowplow because rotary snowplows are not cheap.
No, they are not.
Okay, when we get into the locomotive shop, I'm going to ask you to please stay on the yellow walkway as much as possible.
You can't get off the yellow, only in the yellow, okay, sweetheart?
Oh, look, there's the little trains that they run.
Oh, yeah.
The one time we were here in the summer of recent, it was like train day, and out in the back over there.
Weekend called Rail Fest.
Yeah, it was out in the back. You could have ridden these little mini trains.
Look at the wheels. Check that out.
Stay on the yellow. Wow. Look at those.
These are the drive rods off of the number 26, the locomotive we were just looking at.
Oh, wow.
And to really see this, you're going to have to come in close. So I'll give you permission to leave the yellow walkway. But these are the bearings. Usually when we talk about bearings,
yeah, they're round.
we talk about roller bearings or ball bearings.
Yeah.
These are solid. And this is a metal called babbitt, which is a combination of bronze.
Okay.
Which bronze is basically,
It doesn't stop.
bronze is very soft but has a fairly high melting temperature. They mix into it. Okay, you don't want to lean on this because it's really
dirty.
Filthy.
Oh, so those are slots in there.
It has lead mixed into it.
Oh. Wheel.
And
Stay
the reason
close.
that they do that, up on top of it, Up on top of it is what they call a zerk, which is a grease fitting. You use an air gun to inject hard grease in, and the grooves are so that the grease will spread out over the whole bearing.
Yeah.
Occasionally, that grease will fail.
Okay.
If that fails, you do not want to lose the steel forging of the drive rod and all of its mounting pieces. You do not want to lose the steel pin that goes in here, which is a forged steel pin. These are cheap and
very replaceable.
They're meant to be disposable. So what will happen is, if this gets hot enough, lead has a very low melting temperature. The lead will melt out and actually act as a lubricant.
Oh,
until you can get it to a shop to fix it. Now, notice it's in two pieces.
I checked that
There's a reason for that. When this is in operation, the heaviest wear is here and here. So over time it becomes egg-shaped, oval.
Yeah.
So you loosen up the keeper.
So then
and then you tighten it.
And
you move them
pull this out. Cut off about 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters off of each side, right at that seam.
Yeah.
Put it back together, bore it to a perfect circle again.
Oh.
And you can do that 5 or 10 times. And notice it's got a key.
Big wedge, yep.
A nice little wedge in there, the key, which you keep moving that up to push things closer together. We have a tendency to look at a steam locomotive and think of them as really primitive machines. And they are, to an extent.
That's very impressive. That's a lot of foresight right there.
Yeah, the engineering that went into them was the best engineers of the day in terms of mechanical engineering and materials engineering. These were people who knew what they were doing. They didn't necessarily have the equations that we have today, but they did know what they were doing and designed things very, very well.
So I have a question, because this looks like this has been bored.
Well, after the forging, it was milled.
Yeah,
milled to that shape.
Oh, it's got something on it.
And the reason for that is to make it lighter.
Okay, so I have a question now. When this was done back in the day, they didn't have milling or boring.
Oh, yes, they did.
They had milling machines, but it had to be done by hand.
Would they not have had to do it by hand at one point?
If you go back to the 1860s, yes.
That's what I'm saying.
By the 1870s, you had very large machines powered by overhead belts. By the 1890s, you had very large machines powered by electrical power. This shop, which dates back to 1865, was converted to electrical power for their machinery in 1892. Part of why Scranton is called the Electric City.
Yeah.
I mean, I love these presses. These are beautiful.
I don't actually see a press at the moment.
Those aren't presses?
No, that's a grinder.
Oh, that's a grinder.
Yep.
That's a
planing mill.
That's a planing mill. I thought those were presses.
No, planing mill.
Wow.
They look really old.
And you have something
most of these machines are from the 1940s. A lot of them used to belong to the U.S. Army.
Wow.
This building was abandoned by Conrail in 1978.
Oh, I've heard of Conrail.
Most of the machinery left. Stuff that remained behind was what was too expensive
to fix.
Well, no, it wasn't that. It's nobody wanted it, and it wasn't worth enough as scrap to make it worth pulling it out.
Oh.
Like that overhead crane.
That's what I was looking at.
That overhead crane's from 1948. We did used to use that. We referred to it as Old Sparky. It had exposed direct current wires right next to the operator's right shoulder.
Oh, that's nice.
Now we have a new overhead crane, which is
this one,
which is operated from down here.
Oh.
Which, with considering our very limited staff, really does help.
Yeah.
We've only got about 7 people working back here.
Oh, okay.
Now,
okay, back onto the yellow walkway, please.
That, I think, gets the shoe on the thing.
That is a vertical boring mill. And that is used to cut the inside of tires.
Yeah.
Which go onto the wheels. And for a tire that size, you would make the tire about 81,000th of an inch smaller than the wheel.
Yeah, because then they heat it up.
And they heat it,
Set
and
it into place.
And then,
when it cools,
and
it'll fit back on.
You got it. And does two things. Number one, it means that
It will never come off.
the tire, which is really cheap compared to the casting of the wheel.
Yeah.
And it also compresses the cast steel, which makes the cast steel more resilient, less likely to crack.
Yeah.
Because also, like, even when you're like making like when you watch those shows, like how it's made, a lot of times, even when they're making knives, they're reheating them and then cooling them, and then it.
Well, that's completely different.
That's squelching.
That's trying.
But that's not the same.
No, it's not.
That's a chemical engineer. I mean, that's a chemical thing.
Why do you keep farting with that?
That's where you're trying to have the grains of the metal realign
Yeah.
differently.
But the different types of metal do make a difference.
Yeah.
And cast steel is fairly lightweight compared to forged steel, but it is fragile. It's likely to crack. Even today, think about all of the bridges that elevate, the drawbridges all through the New York City area.
Yeah.
All of those have gears. If you take a look at the gears, you have a cast steel wheel. The gear teeth all the way around are a rolled steel tire with the gear teeth with the teeth cut into it.
Yeah.
That way, when the gears have worn out, you do not have to replace the entire
whole
cast
thing.
steel wheel.
Then you just.
Because steel castings that size, today even today they're very expensive, and you can't be consistent with them.
Right.
If you are casting something the size of that tire, of that wheel, which is a fairly small spoked wheel, you can have a difference of 40 or 50 pounds in the weight of it after the casting, and you can have a difference of half an inch in the diameter.
Can't do that.
Well, no, you can, because you don't have a choice. You just deal with it.
Yeah, you have to deal with it.
Which is why, for steam locomotives, even the big drive wheels on a steam locomotive, if you built two to exactly the same blueprint, they might have slightly different size wheels. Which is why each steam locomotive has a certain speed that you get the maximum power and smoothness, and certain speeds where the dynamic augment starts to feed on itself, and you end up, like your washing machine trying to walk out of your pantry.
You get a shimmy.
It gets a lot worse than a shimmy. It can actually take you right off the tracks because it's a vertical oscillation.
Oh dear.
Oh.
Yeah, which really not good. Okay.
So why do they have those? Oh, for a second there, I said, why are those? Then I realized after I said it, I said, why are those cuts? But that's the whole.
Yeah. Okay, we're going past the place where they're doing some active machines, so we're going to stay to the right of the yellow walkway.
Like that. Has walk first story concept. Whoa, look at that thing going around.
Has. Whoa! I've never seen this in real life. This is cool. It's a boring machine, right?
Why it's boring?
That's actually how the definition of that word came to be.
What?
Boring. That's how that word came to be, because when you would bore a hole, it was long and tedious, and thus the term boring came to be.
There you go.
I like how it's got that. I like the light that's like making. Now, is that the light doing a strobe effect? Is the light doing like a strobe effect?
Probably.
Because it was cool, because it looked like you could see all the parts kind of moving with the light.
Most AC is 60 hertz, so it's pulsating faster than you would
see, but it does make a stroke effect. So at some point, it might look like it's going backwards at some speeds.
Yeah, that's cool. So what you making? Ooh, with that special metal. I think it's the metal that's got the lead in it. It doesn't have lead in it? Oh, it does. Yeah, that's the cool one that he was talking about earlier. Thank you. You have a nice day.
And that year they said, okay, well, let's just go ahead and get the toolboxes, because that way they can lock them. They no longer have to check out a tool and check it back in every single day. They can check out a tool and keep it checked out for a year if they need to.
Oh, okay.
And it has made things much, much more efficient.
Now that's a plus.
Which, considering how few people we have back here, we need to.
Definitely.
You know, a couple other projects we have going on. One of the projects is that we are rebuilding some of our passenger cars. And this one,
wow. No brakes. Good to know.
it has shop trucks underneath it.
I can see that.
But this is a Delaware Line 1 and Western MU trailer. This was built 1930.
Look at that.
And was in service into the early 1980s from the Hopatcong area to Hoboken.
Okay.
Ooh.
This is the line that parallels Interstate 80.
All right.
And
there's the Constitution.
From 1930 until the early 1980s, you would have one locomotive car, which is a passenger car with electric motors, pantograph, and the engineer up in the front end. Then you would have a trailer, then you would have a power car, then a trailer, power car, trailer.
Oh, okay.
You could make the trains as long as you needed to.
Okay.
And this one, we're in the process of rebuilding it, and these have become real headaches. Because, yes, they were mass-produced. No two of them came out the same.
Oh dear.
There were minor variations, and you get this today with freight cars. You get this today with most large machinery, the earth-moving equipment. Those can be 5 inches difference in size, easily. Well, where this gets strange is the window frames are not all the same size.
Okay.
And each window was built to fit one window frame. They had carpenters. Carpenters were cheap.
Yeah.
So each window frame has its own individual window.
That is correct.
That sounds like my house.
Yeah.
I'm not joking about that.
We had, when I lived in Maryland, we had a house that was built in 1808. The windows were all from the 1840s.
Oh no.
And
One of a kind.
none of them were
standard.
anything close to standard. Every one of them was different. The one time that we broke a pane of glass, we had to have a glazier come in and specially measure it exactly.
Been there, done that.
Yep. So.
And my house was
built in the 80s.
Yeah.
Piece of shit. Sorry.
Things are, so we are working on these, but it's probably going to be a few years before we're back up to the number of passenger cars that we want. We, at this point, do not have a schedule for when we're going to be running trains. Mostly because we are negotiating a long-term contract, comprehensive contract with the local short line railroad. And we've got people up here negotiating, we've got people down in Washington negotiating, we've got people at the regional office in Philadelphia negotiating, we have the Federal Railroad Administration involved. But once we do it, get the contract right, then renewing it will be no big deal.
Yeah.
But we want to get everything covered correctly, because in the past we were kind of operating on a handshake, which created some friction. We're hoping to be able to run longer excursions. We won't be going very far this year. We'll be going as far as Tobyhanna for most of the summer, because they're doing a lot of track work between Tobyhanna and East Stroudsburg. which means that it would take us 5 hours to get from here to East Stroudsburg. Which, okay, 5 hours to get there, 2 hour layover, 5 hours to get back. We'd be getting back at 10 o'clock at night. we can't do that.
No.
But the locomotives that we will most likely be using, the number 664 here and the number 663 in the roundhouse.
Yeah.
And this is a good example of partnerships, because those locomotives do not belong to us. Those belong to a volunteer group over in New Jersey, the Anthracite Railroad Historical Society and the Tri-State chapter of the NRHS. These are groups of people who live and breathe railroading.
Right. Because we just went to the railroading place in Jersey. They had a lot of people there that are involved in those type of things.
Well, the big problem is if you own a locomotive, it can cost about $5,000 a month to store it somewhere. Which, if you're a volunteer nonprofit, that's 60 grand a year that you're just basically tossing away. That's like more than most volunteer groups have.
Right.
So we worked out what's called a cooperating agreement that they could store the locomotive here for free, use our shops to work on it. They would do the major work, which that one just had a generator replaced.
Wow.
We get to use the locomotive, use it for our excursions, use it for train rides, and we do the minor work and pay for the fuel and lubricants, which is great. Now, that locomotive is an F3, built by Electromotive Division in 1948, and
it's got that diesel look.
Oh yeah, it's the classic 40s and 50s look for a diesel electric locomotive, and that is not a Delaware Lackawanna Western locomotive, even though that's the paint scheme it's wearing.
Oh no!
That is actually a Bangor and Aroostook locomotive.
Oh.
From up in Maine. If this were our locomotive, we would have to paint it in Bangor and Aroostook colors because that's what it wore historically. Because it's owned by a volunteer group, they can paint it wherever
they want.
Prior to this, they were painted for the Central Area of New Jersey in the tangerine and blue scheme.
Oh yeah.
Hideously ugly. It's like looking at Mets colors, which is horrible. I'm sorry, Red Sox fan. I have a.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Red Sox fan. Wait a minute. You gotta hate the Yankees.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
We love the Red
But
Sox.
I also remember 1986.
Oh well. Sorry about that.
In 1948, the Delaware Lackawanna Western.
We rooted for you the whole time that you guys took the World Series. And I have an official shirt. I should have brought it. I went up to Boston like the same year, and they looked at my Ranger jacket and they said, "Oh, you're from New York." And I said, "That's okay. I root for the other guys," because it would have been like that. But I bought this shirt. It says, it's in the thing. It says like the Coca-Cola logo. It says "Choke."
The official soft drink of the Yankees.
I like it. In 1948, Delaware Lackawanna Western bought 63 of these locomotives. They numbered them 600 to 662.
Oh. Wow.
When these were repainted by the volunteer group, they made them 663 and 664. And they should have both of them running this year, which will be really, really neat. For one thing, it means you've got really good visibility going either direction because you put them back to back.
Yeah.
Now,
how does it get out of here? Has to back up
through the garage door.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, there's no doors on the other side.
Well, there's one there and there's one where we came in, but
circles for? Like you could look straight in, in the window.
That was to provide light for the
internal workings.
For the
engineer.
For the if someone's working inside the locomotive, provide some light. And it was also just styling.
Oh, okay.
The portholes were something that Electromotive Division of General Motors was really into. Kind of like putting them on Buicks.
This is the most broken down train I've ever seen.
Well, not broken down,
Well, like,
but torn apart.
That's what I meant, like taken apart.
Yeah. And some of the parts we have here, and we're working on them.
Oh.
The wheels that go under the front end, it's a 462. 4 wheels on the front end, 6 drive wheels, 2 under the back end. The 4 that go under the front end have actually been sent out to be rebuilt.
Ah.
The mounts for them, the bearing mounts for them, we have here, and we're rebuilding them.
Neat.
The main drive wheels are currently out being rebuilt.
Ah.
We have the bearings that are going to go on this locomotive. This is a very unusual locomotive. It was built with roller bearings.
Ooh.
The Timken Company made a donation to the National Park Service of a brand new set of 6 bearings for this locomotive, because this has roller bearings, not solid bearings.
Wow.
For the drive wheels. Piece goes under the back end. We have that here. We're working on it. Some of this is in better shape than we expected. The boiler itself, the tube part of it, the barrel, is in really good shape. There's a couple of places where it is too thin.
I can see some. There's like something's marked with like a marker.
On the first boiler course towards the back, about halfway down. Yeah, that's an area where there's been a little bit of corrosion. That we can fill that in with weld, heat treat it, do an X-ray. We're good to go. But you can see where they've done the ultrasound test, and with each square they test it 5 times, and they're looking for a couple different things. One is they're looking for how thick the steel is, and it measures it to within 1/1000th of an inch.
Dang!
Almost this whole thing is over spec, which is normal for rolled steel.
That's good.
They also are looking for cracks, because cracks will quite often begin in the center of a steel plate and not be visible from the outside. Right. And the third thing that they're looking for, which is actually the most dangerous one, is hydrogen seepage. The steel crystals, you will get hydrogen seeping between the crystals, and it will make the steel very, very brittle. People usually call it crystallized steel. Well, all steel has crystals.
Yeah.
But this basically, when you get hydrogen seepage, it means that the crystals are no longer firmly attached to each other.
It sounds like when ice gets into the sidewalk and cracks it.
No, because there's no expansion to it.
Oh, there's no expansion to it. It's just, when you said seepage, I'm thinking it's going in there and
it is seeping in at the molecular level between the crystals. But it doesn't.
It doesn't actually expand it. It just severs the bond.
It severs the bonds. Yeah. It passed that flying colors. Now the back end of it, that's where we kept running into problems. We got in there and took a look, and noticed that the front end of the boiler, the rear flue sheet, they had cut it out and welded a new piece in.
Oh dear.
Which we looked at that and thought, because that's not legal. Until 1995, that was not legal on a steam locomotive boiler.
Yeah, because that could fail.
Today, we have very good ways of doing it. We do full penetration welding, and then we heat treat it, and then we X-ray it to look for problems.
Leo, stay over here.
And it works pretty well. Well, we took a look at that and realized what had happened, and it actually has to do with the reason this locomotive survived. After the Boston and Maine stopped running steam locomotives, they had to pull a steam locomotive off of the scrap line in Billerica, Massachusetts, to provide steam heat for the roundhouse, because you no longer had live locomotives in there keeping things warm. These locomotives, you pull them in and turn them off. So they grabbed this one off the deadline, the scrap line, and used as a stationary boiler for about 4 years. And at some point during those 4 years, they replaced the front end of the firebox. Well, since it was not in active service,
they could do that.
They could do that.
Okay.
But as soon as we saw that, we realized, okay.
That's like that one train in Thomas the Tank Engine. They made him into a boiler for acting up.
It happens. We pulled out the entire firebox and discovered 2 more problems. One was that the mud ring was shot. So we had to completely fabricate a new mud ring. The other thing that we found out...
It's a mud ring. Is that the stuff where when you're blowing out the bottom?
Mud ring is basically the bottom of the firebox. You can see where the rivet holes are really close together down along the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
And that is about
You're getting
6
what?
or 8
What happened?
inches,
Bit?
about 6 or 8 inches below
By
where
bugs?
the fire burns, which means that as the mud accumulates down there, the water can still cool the steel that's by the fire.
Oh, okay.
Well, that was shot, so we had to fabricate a new one. But even worse, on the outside, right below where the Constitution
Leah,
label
don't
is,
take that off.
Stop.
we found welded to the outside, the inside of the outer sheet, an 8-foot by 2-foot by half-inch thick piece of steel on both sides with the stay bolts running right through it.
Oh,
Ooh.
God.
Which, that's flat out illegal. Still is illegal. And we figured, okay, well, there had to be a reason that they were doing it. Well, it turned out that there were cracks radiating out from all the stay bolt holes.
Oh no.
And this apparently was done during World War II. Which, during World War II, they played fast and loose with a lot of rules just because they wanted to keep things in service as much as possible.
Yeah.
So, okay, those have got to be replaced. So we started to rebuild it. We actually made new side sheets for it.
Yeah, when you said World War II, I'm like,
And the side sheets, we discovered a major problem. We had a boiler engineer come in and take a look at what we were working on. And he did some measurements and did some calculations and realized that during World War II, they changed the type of flexible stay bolt in this locomotive, and they went from a surface-mounted sleeve, where basically you have a small hole through the outer sheet, and then the sleeve is welded to the outer sheet and the bolt goes through, to an insert sheet, where the hole is much bigger and the sleeve actually fits inside.
ooh.
Which is fine, except that the centers of the holes were still the same distance apart. But the holes were now 3 times the size.
So,
Which meant much less material between the holes, and you run the risk of what boiler engineers so quaintly call unzipping.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
I know what that is.
We didn't discover that until we had already made that side sheet, so that's going to have to be remade. But luckily, it's not that expensive to make. It's a fairly flat piece of steel, and just locating the holes and cutting it is fairly simple. We do not know when this locomotive is going to run. We have stopped issuing any goals on it, but we do know that it's going to run around $2.5 million, which sounds like a whole lot of money considering this thing brand new in 1934 only cost $200,000. But think about this. How much of Staten Island could you have bought in 1934 for $200,000?
All of it?
Okay, how many places on Staten Island would $200,000 be a down payment?
nothing barely.
There's a lot of places where $200,000 might be a down payment.
Yeah.
No, okay, I'm thinking trying to buy it outright.
Yeah, buy it outright. Even $2.5 million is not going to buy outright a lot of places there.
Yep.
So $2.5 million is actually not that bad. But
You're a non-profit organization.
well, no, we're not nonprofit. We're federal government. Most of the funding for this is not coming through federal sources. It's coming through donations and matching grants from actually different federal agencies, including the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Wow.
And also some state agencies.
So
And-
what are those circles that are on behind it? I mean, those tubes that are coming out like on this side.
You mean the little holes in the corner?
Not these, no, those holes right there.
The one right here? That is a drain plug for when you wash out the boiler.
I'm talking about like they're facing this way, like they would have tubes attached to it.
Okay, those are part of the mounting system for what's called a thermic siphon,
Ah.
which draws water through the hottest part of your firebox.
Ah.
Oh, okay. So how does that go back? Does that go up somewhere? Or?
No, actually that would go into the firebox itself.
Oh, okay.
And basically it draws water in near the bottom where the water is cool and takes it up through the hottest part of your firebox, and it flows out at the top. It keeps the water circulating much better and increases thermal efficiency to about 6.5%.
Neat.
Okay.
This is going to take a while. The funding is almost fully in place, but it's still going to be a few years. We don't know exactly how long, and we know that, like working on an old house, you start working on one thing, you're going to find something worse underneath.
Yep.
We think we found all of it, but there's no way to be sure
But
until
that was like the one time when his dad decides to take my car, which was like a cute little Ion, out to go buy something.
Buy you a pie.
It was going to buy me a pie, and I get this call. I'm all right, but the car is not, because some lady was on her cell phone, blew the light, spun him 180 degrees, tore off the back end of the car, and when they started taking apart the car, it was like, okay, well, we have to replace the door and the back here, and then, but then once they started getting into like closer, then they realized how much more damage there was, and like what at first was like $3,400 worth of damage turned into $7,000.
Well, this isn't so much damage. This is just normal wear and tear for something that's that old.
When you start looking at things, then you find out, oh well, this needs to be replaced because of the wear and tear here.
This is less like a car accident. This is more like starting with regrouting your tub, and it becomes replacing your entire bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, the crane's moving.
Oh, cool. Look, Leo, look up. Is that a settle in there? That big blue thing?
Right through there?
That. The thing on the side.
Oh, that's an air tank.
Huh?
Oh, it's air.
Oh. Whoa. Where did it go, Leo?
I wonder what they're gonna move.
Don't know. But unfortunately, we're going to have to get back. So unless they do it quickly, we won't actually be able to see that much. Okay, it looks like they're going to be working here. So come on right this way.
All right.
That's another one where we replaced the 1948 crane with the modern crane.
Yeah.
So that we don't
Old
have
Sparky.
to be up there. You can actually see way over in the back corner where the ladder was to get up into the crane. And see, now he just uses this neat little device.
A little remote.
Yeah. Makes life so much easier.
That's your personal Wii.
So what are you picking up today? The toolbox?
Well, it's a parts box.
Parts box, okay.
Yeah, I gotta take it up there. Done down here. How you doing, bud?
Oh, not too bad. Okay, we're gonna head back in now. So come on right this way.
Is that a diesel train over there? That's
That's it's streamlined F3A, but it doesn't have a cab.
oh.
And
Oh, I see the other car
that
from
one
behind it.
has been modified to make it look like an F3, even though it's an F7. And eventually they want to have all three of them up and running so they can have an ABA set, which will look really, really good.
That other train that's behind the Lackawanna 664, is that the 663 facing the
No,
other
that's the that's the 663B.
Oh, okay.
The 663 is sitting in the roundhouse.
Oh, okay. So that would be the train facing the opposite way?
Yeah, well, I mean, with a turntable, you can face them either direction.
Oh.
But yeah, we will generally try to, if we're using two of them, we'll run them back to back.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
That way, when you run around to the other end of the train, you still have a usable cab. You can still see where you're going.
What does a long cut sharpener do? Wow. That's big pieces of what looks like.
Those are actually thermic siphons,
Oh.
which are also with those welds on.
Hey, the nickel plate.
Where?
Right there.
Oh. Yeah.
Well, that's just the hood. The locomotive itself is in the shop. We are in the process of replacing the engine and the generator on it.
Is that the one that's all like was that the one that was behind the stuff we were looking at?
Yes. Yeah. And we actually are going with a more modern prime mover in it because the parts for the old 567 engines are getting impossible to find.
Oh dear.
No one's making new parts for them anymore because
That gets complicated.
they're really disappearing from commercial use. So we're putting in a 645.
Huh.
But we'll just go ahead and downgrade it so that it will
Well, if you can get parts for that one,
Oh yeah.
it makes perfect
The
sense.
645s aren't in use everywhere.
Yeah.
They're the most common prime mover for short line railroads in the U.S.
I mean,
And they're
I'm pretty
also
sure.
heavily used for maritime service.
Yeah, that. I think definitely the MTA's got a whole bunch of them for like, and for the rail yards.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Well, Uncle Ed's got his camera. Well, I also,
Do they still have? Does this place still have oh, I can't remember what it was called. And I just saw it a couple minutes ago. The ash pit that they dump the ash.
No, the ash pit was filled in actually to become a diesel locomotive servicing area, standing and fueling facility. The ash pit is still there, but it's completely buried.
Ah.
And we kind of know that if we did decide to dig it out, we would run into majorly toxin problems.
Ooh.
Because when it was filled in, they didn't use nice clean fill to fill it in. They just used whatever was hanging around.
what was
Oh.
that? What
The ash pits where they would dump all the ash.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank
Please
you.
enjoy the rest of your day. If you want to go through the roundhouse on your own, you can. Just stay, obviously, on the correct side of the fence.
Okay.
You can go up, take a look at the work they're doing on the 26. You can continue along with the other locomotives and enjoy your day.
It's funny because my uncle used to work